The Venezuelan president, Nicolás Maduro Moros, announced the creation of a legal mechanism for the protection of national assets stationed abroad. The United States Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen insisted on the real risk that the country will default on its debt on June the 1st. And thousands of Palestinians mark May 15th as the 75th anniversary of Nakba Day, when nearly 700,000 indigenous Palestinians were ethnically cleansed from their homes by Zionist militias. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, as always, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. During the fourth edition of the program Con Maduro Más, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros reiterated his support for the bill of the protection of the assets, rights and interests of the Republic and its entities abroad, which aims to repel the illegal actions by the United States.
And now the government of the United States is trying to give the final blow. The final blow. Who is that blow addressed to? To all Venezuelans. Who is to blame? The far right. That same far right that now has candidates and pre-candidates. That crooked far right is the only responsible for the theft of our assets today. So I support with all my energy and my spirit and my strength, and I ask all of the country to support this law that the National Assembly is working on in order to take a step forward in the protection of our assets around the world.
And the Venezuelan president also ratified the Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's suggestion that the Organization of American States should disappear after considering it guilty of instability in the region.
Well, the statement made by López Obrador has been running around these days. President López Obrador has always had a very clear vision of these international affairs, and the OAS has no doubt a terrible history. The Organization of American States has gone down to almost nothing. It is already in ruins. We could say that the OAS is already in ruins, and the ruins of the OAS should disappear, as President López Obrador says. They should disappear, perhaps to be kept in a museum of the horrendous, of cynism, of interventionism, because the OAS has endorsed all the invasion and all the coup in the last 70 years in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Let's move on to other topics. The government of Argentina decided to implement a series of measures aimed at stabilizing the different exchange rates present in the country's economy. The Ministry of Economy announced that it will increase the interest rate from 91 to 97% per year to make peso loans more attractive and accelerate agreements with multilateral organizations. Besides this measure, extra initiatives will be taken to sustain the levels of consumption and activity. The entity indicated that the intervention in the foreign exchange market is complemented with a series of announcements aimed at slowing down the rise of prices, for which the central market will import fresh and not perishable staple products with zero tariff. Moreover, the minister Sergio Massa declared that they will accelerate negotiations with the International Monetary Fund and China to obtain the necessary dollars to curb speculations and calm the exchange market. In Uruguay, the Central Workers Union blamed the national government for the water shortage in the country. The representatives of the workers' delegation and members of the Federation of Public Water Company Employees demanded during a press conference that the executive branch respond to the water deficit facing the nation. The delegates detailed that Montevideo is in a state of emergency due to the critical situation caused by the lack of water. The workers stated that due to the problem, they are evaluating the possibility of calling for a mobilization in defense of the vital liquid. An Ecuadorian criminal court opened on Monday the trial hearing against the former police lieutenant Germán Cáceres and Lieutenant Alfonso Camacho, charged with the femicide of María Belén Bernal. The hearing began after 8:30 a.m. local time on Monday at the judicial complex in the north of Quito. The criminal court expects to evaluate in 3 days the evidence presented by lawyers for the defendants in order to determine the guilt or innocence of the accused. If found guilty, the two defendants could face up to 34 years in prison, Cáceres as direct perpetrator and Camacho as perpetrator by omission. And on Monday, the United States Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen insisted on the real risk that the country will default on its debt on June the 1st. Yellen has confessed that she does not believe that they will be able to meet the obligations contracted by the government if Congress continues to the standstill. The Treasury Secretary warned on May the 7th that it is no longer possible to take extraordinary measures to avoid default. She has addressed a letter to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Republican Kevin McCarthy, in which she warns that the U.S. default will produce an economic and financial catastrophe that could generate a world economic recession. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, at least 4 people were killed and 2 police officers were wounded in Farmington, New Mexico, as a result of a shooting outside a church. The shooting was reported shortly after 11 a.m. local time in the area of Brookside Park. 2 officers were shot, but both were reported to be in stable condition at the San Juan Regional Medical Center. Authorities asked citizens to stay away from the street and the avenue where the events occurred. At least 3 elementary schools and other establishments in the area of the shooting were closed on the emergency. According to the police report, the suspect was 18 years old and had multiple weapons. He was confronted by the police officers and was shot and killed. At least 6 people have been killed in a fire that erupted in early hours on Tuesday in a 4-story hostel in Wellington, the capital city of New Zealand. Firefighters said 52 people had been rescued, some from the roof, but dozens more were still unaccounted for. Smoke could be seen pouring from the hostel during the night as 18 firefighters and 20 trucks rattled the blaze. The commander of the Fire and Emergency District, Nakba, said that around 90 people were thought to have been in the building when the fire started. Prime Minister Chris Hipkins described the fire as an absolute tragedy. 6 people were taken to hospital, 1 in serious condition, Wellington Ambulance Service stated. An additional 15 people were treated at the scene. A police spokesperson said the final death toll was expected to be fewer than 10, but the number will only be known after they can access the building. Let's move on to other topics. Turkey's presidential election will be decided in a runoff election, officials said on Monday, after incumbent Recep Tayyip Erdogan pulled ahead of his chief challenger, but fell short of an outright victory that will extend his rule into a 3rd decade.
It has been observed that no candidate has been able to qualify for the election stipulated in Article 4 of Law Number 6271, and it has been decided by our board to hold the 2nd round of elections on Sunday, May 28, 2023, according to the previously announced election calendar. It was seen that Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan's vote was 49.54%. Likewise, if we accept that all 35,874 foreign country votes were given to Mr. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, it was seen that he received 44.85% of the votes.
And the United Kingdom agreed to supply a new military package to Ukraine, including combat drones and air defense missiles. The announcement was made during a visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to the United Kingdom as part of a tour of Western Europe to seek support from the EU bloc's governments. According to a British government statement, it was agreed to send hundreds of air defense missiles and unmanned aerial systems, as well as a long-range drone crew with the capacity to attack from more than 200 kilometers. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak confirmed that the equipment will be delivered within a month in order to support the Ukrainian forces' offensive. Within the framework of his tour in Europe, the governments in France and Germany also expressed their support for Ukraine. And the Russian government has urged the United States to complete the elimination of its remaining chemical arsenals as soon as possible. The head of the Russian delegation to a session of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, Kirill Lysogorsky, noted that 99% of the chemical weapons stockpiles declared by the convention signatory states had been verifiably destroyed, and that the chemical plants for the manufacture of such agents had been dismantled. However, Washington continues to postpone the total destruction of its arsenals, even though U.S. President Joe Biden said his country was ready to complete such destruction. The United States is the only country among the signatories to the Convention of the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons that maintains an impressive stockpile of toxic agents for military use. And TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries using StoreSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. For the first time in history, at the headquarters of the United Nations in New York, tributes were paid in commemoration of Nakba Day, or as it is known by the Palestinians, the Day of the Catastrophe. 75 years had to pass since the tragic 15th of May 1948, so that pressure by the world public opinion and the United Nations Committee for the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, the spaces of the organism could be used to repudiate the crime that, in the words of the Palestinian president himself, did not begin in 1945 and has not ended either. Precisely, Mahmoud Abbas, during his speech, after recalling that Israel has violated more than 1,000 UN resolutions, asked for the country to be expelled from the organization. For the first time, the United Nations is officially commemorating the Palestinian Nakba, an action stemming from the UN's partition of British-ruled Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas demanded before the international organization that Israel stop its aggression against the Palestinian people.
Officially demand, in accordance with the international law and international resolutions, to make sure that Israel respects these resolutions or suspend Israel's membership in the United Nations. The international community should shoulder its responsibility. It should end the aggression. It should provide international protection to the Palestinian people. We are being subjected to violence. Every day we are complaining. Every day we are calling upon you. Every day, please protect us. Please protect us.
For her part, Undersecretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, stressed that the UN is clear on its position that the Israeli occupation must come to an end.
Is clear. The occupation must end. A two-state solution that will bring lasting peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike must be achieved in line with international law, UN resolutions, and previous agreements. We want to see an independent state of Palestine living side by side with Israel in peace and security, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states.
In Venezuela, several organizations in support of the Palestinian cause joined the commemorations for the 75th anniversary of the Nakba. In this sense, since Saturday, May 13th, members of these organizations have been carrying out activities to express their support and solidarity with the Palestinian people in their struggle against the Israeli occupation. On Monday, as part of the activities undertaken to accompany the Palestinian resistance, these organizations held a forum in the facilities of the Bolivarian University of Venezuela, which addressed several issues and joined the demands addressed to the national and international community to intervene so that Israel puts an end to its actions against the Palestinian people. Hundreds of supporters of Pakistan's ruling alliance held a sit-in protest on Monday against alleged undue favors by the judiciary to former Prime Minister Imran Khan. The protest was mainly led by the Jamiat Ulema-e-Islam Fasal Party, one of the 13 members of the country's ruling coalition, the Pakistan Democratic Movement. The government supporters also broke through the main entrance of the capital's high-security red zone, which houses prominent state offices, including the parliament. The tensions between the government and the judiciary began earlier this year over holding provincial elections and have intensified since May the 9th, when the Supreme Court declared Khan's dramatic arrest in the corruption case illegal, clearing the way for its 2-week bail and eventual release on May the 12th. The Italian Interior Minister Matteo Piantedosi praised Tunisia's significant efforts against irregular immigration during a visit to the North African country. In a meeting with his Tunisian counterpart, Kamel Feki, Piantedosi expressed his full appreciation for the significant effort made by Tunisia to guard its maritime and land borders, to fight the networks of traffickers and confiscate their boats to rescue migrants at sea. Piantedosi also met with Tunisian President Kais Saied, who argued that migration cannot be solved by an exclusively security approach. Saied sought a remedy for the reasons that led to irregular migration and called for, as quickly as possible, an international conference to find solutions that could stop it. Now we move on to other topics, and so far 6 people have died and more than 700 have been injured by the strong winds of Cyclone Mosha during its path over Myanmar's coastal regions. The storm cut off more than half of the nation's coastal towns, and at least 1,000 people were reported trapped by the waters, which reached 3.6 meters in the western areas. According to the Burmese Army's Information Office, the cyclone damaged thousands of houses, leaving more than 20,000 people sheltered in humanitarian centers. The military institution also reported a lack of supplies in some of the humanitarian zones as a result of the increasing numbers of refugees arriving at the centers. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, as always, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.